minutes after, so I think it's a good time then.
Absolutely. Well, hello everyone and welcome. Today marks the first webinar in a six-part series called Are You Ready to Export? And I feel like that's a fair question. We have found that the majority of our exporters get their start accidentally. My name is Jonathan Bricker, and I'm the chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. In my primary role, I work for Regions Bank, and I'm located in Rogers, Arkansas, and I'm a commercial relationship manager. I want to begin today by thanking our sponsors, Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions and the Arkansas Workforce Connections. Their sponsorship and their partnership is what allows us to put on these webinars. I really appreciate you all joining us today. For those of you who quite aren't sure who the deck is and what we do, allow me to do a quick introduction. We're a private, nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each deck member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for our real-world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience within our council in many different sectors. Now, having said that, we don't know all the answers, but what we can do is introduce you to someone who does. We're basically a community of connections in the exporting world, and we want to be your strategic partner and help you grow your bottom line. My hope for the day is that you walk away from this webinar with a little more confidence in your exporting abilities. If you have any questions throughout the webinar and you don't feel comfortable asking it here, I invite you to reach out to us on our website, exportarkansas.org, and we'll have one of our members reach out to you. There you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is just chock full of pertinent international news and trade show opportunities. The classes today, these are designed to generate questions as you kind of work through what it takes to successfully send your product or your service overseas. These are meant to be very high-level overviews of some of the most important parts of becoming exporters. When you're ready to take that next step, the District Export Council will be right here with you. As we begin, I'd like to ask everyone to keep themselves muted and raise your hand if you have a question, or you're welcome to put it into the chat, and we'll be sure to monitor that. I'd like to introduce everyone to today's moderator, Mr. Rudy Ortiz. Rudy is the owner of Strategic Business Services, LLC, where he helps companies with a wide variety of international business and exporting needs. Rudy works alongside companies entering new markets and is a U.S. partner of Global Market Entry Consultants, which is a group of experts that are located in 32 different countries.
Uh,
Hello.
uh, Jai, Jai, oh, there we go. There we go. Okay,
There we
thank
go.
you. Thank you.
Awesome. So anyway, Rudy, appreciate you putting the series on. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I guess I will go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay. And I think you should see my full screen at this point. Is that correct? Very good.
Yes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, one of the reasons that we started this particular series and in particular this session is, kind of like Jonathan said, uh, a lot of people they start exporting not strategically, but reactively. And what I mean by that is that, they'll get an order, from Germany or X, whatever it happens to be. And, it's not one that a country that they were marketing in at all, but somebody happened to find the company and decide that they want to buy whatever it is. And they maybe they're online, maybe they called and so the company shipped them whatever widgets or products they make, and this happens enough times to a company, they start actually thinking, maybe we ought to be actually actively and proactively and strategically exporting, and at that point they start looking at like, well, okay, like where? And obviously, Google searches are a really good place to start, but we'll talk more about that a little bit further down as we talk about research. Okay, so in terms of what we're hoping to be able to accomplish during this session is, we'll discuss this various exporting business opportunities, and we'll talk about some of the things that you have to take into consideration when you're going to start exporting, in the hope that you'll get comfortable that it isn't this overwhelming thing. There are lots and lots of partners, and with logistics companies, and you have the District Export Council, and our goal is to help you learn about exporting so it isn't completely foreign to you, and introduce you to experts that can help you along the way. And that way you can avoid having problems. Because obviously, if you have a major problem the first time you export, you're going to be a lot less likely to continue exporting. And we're going to introduce you to some export related resources, both in terms of general information and also in terms of people, with a hope that you'll decide to make your first foray, or even your 10th foray. The other thing that I've discovered in teaching exporting to various companies, that even companies that are already in several markets and have been exporting for a while, invariably they will get something from these classes that they did not know, tools that they were unaware about, or considerations that they hadn't taken into account, and become better exporters. And like I said, I've worked with companies that have as many as they're exporting to as many as 40 plus countries, and when they've attended my classes, they picked something up that was valuable to them. Okay, well, like, why should we export? You may or may not be aware that as a country, very few people, companies export, and they have various reasons for that. But I will tell you that one of the main reasons to export, and these numbers that you see in front of you change a little bit. Uh, Basically 95% of the world's population is outside of the United States. Well, that's a really, really good reason to export, right? If you're only reaching, let's say, 5% of the population in the United States, there's 95% that you're missing out on, because you haven't made any attempts to market to them. And there will be a large number of countries that are ideal to market to, given whatever sort of product or service you provide. And there will obviously be some that are not ideal. And so we want to make sure that we start with the ones that are, I guess you could say, the low-hanging fruit. So that's a really good reason why you should consider exporting, or if you are already exporting, to broaden the number of markets that you're in. Let me see here. Some additional reasons for exporting. As I kind of mentioned, global market opportunities for your products and service. There's, it's unlikely that you are producing something or providing some sort of service that the rest of the world is just not interested in. That's very, very unlikely. And one of the things that is important to understand as well is that services are actually the fastest growing segment of exports. Services like engineering, architectural work, just all sorts of accounting, legal services. All sorts of services are available to export. Software development. Lots of companies, they produce software, and they provide that as a service globally. So not only if you have widgets, as we say here, hard products that you can touch, but also services as well that you can export, and it's the fastest growing segment of exporting at this time. Obviously, you can have increased revenues and profitability by exporting. One of the things that people kind of miss out on whenever they're thinking about exporting, well, okay, so why would my profits go up? Well, as you increase the number of products that you provide globally, very often the materials and other cost factors will actually go down, but because of the increased volume, and with that, that increased margin goes straight to the bottom line. So you can actually increase your profitability merely by exporting. Obviously, if you become much more well known, just putting aside for a second the increased revenues, the fact that more people know about you, that you become a trusted uh, brand, obviously that in itself is going to generate additional sales, company productivity, in increasing your sales and in increasing your capacity to produce stuff, whether it's, once again, whether it's software, whether it's hammers or whatever it happens to be. You're going to have to be more productive, more efficient, and you'll have the money to be able to put systems into place that will help you with the productivity, further increasing your productivity and your profits. So it's just this cycle is like the more you do, the lower your costs go. The lower your costs go, the more money you have. The more money you have, the more people you can hire. The more better machines, more efficient machines you can hire for production, and on and on and on. So it's just this wonderful cycle. In terms of new product innovations, I remember the first trip I ever took overseas with many, 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 many years ago happened to be Italy. And they had machines there that I had never seen before. In the United States, we tend to think that, well, we got the best of everything. Well, not necessarily. The other countries are also very, very innovative, and so developing innovation, even going to other countries and seeing some of the stuff that they're doing that you may not be aware of, that you may not have access to, is a really good reason for exporting and developing innovation and new possible markets. And we'll talk about uh, old products versus new products in just a little while. There are also possible tax advantages, and I'm gonna read a little bit from this page here. There are two different export tax incentives that the United States government provides. One is called the Interest Charge Domestic International Sales Corporation, otherwise known as IC-DISC, DISC. And the other one is the Foreign Derived Intangible Income Regime, FDII. Uh, and there's lots of great information about that and the money that you can save on your taxes as a consequence of exporting. The United States government wants to encourage companies to export, and the reason for that is at the Governor's Awards, I kind of mentioned that recently, and that is the way that wealth is created, from bringing it from somewhere else. And whether it's domestic and you cut into somebody's market and take that market, i.e., you're getting it from somewhere else, or as a country, when you bring wealth from another country into the United States, that increases the wealth of the United States, and that can only happen through exporting. So there are all sorts of tax advantages that the United States provides in order to encourage companies to export. So once again, more profitability there as well. Well, so one of the things that a company has to consider is you're going to have internal resources and external resources, and we'll talk about the external in just a little while. But a lot of times, what people think is that they may have really good sales domestically, and they think that they're going to just use the same identical financial and departmental and human resources to do international business, and that doesn't work particularly well. You really need to have dedicated resources of financial resources, human resources, and departmental resources to focus on export markets. When I first arrived here to Arkansas, I was working with a company. They make air conditioning systems, and they do quite well. I think at the time, and this was 15 years ago, they were at about 90 million, and the sales manager thought, hey, we can increase our revenues and profitability by doing international business. And so I started working with them, but we've after we presented to the management, they were unwilling to utilize or acquire more resources towards international. I guess they were happy where they were at, but I will say that trying to divert financial resources, departmental resources, and human resources can be a drain. So you have to have the means to be able to acquire more of these things, and that's just really important to understand from the get-go. Okay, so in order to be able to make that decision, whether whether we should really look into exporting or not, these are some of the questions that you really need to be asking yourself. Does your company have a product or service that it can export? Uh, does it have an export plan? It's going to be really important to do the research and try to figure out where your best markets are at, as opposed to, well, I think Mexico will be a good place, or Italy would be a good place. It really requires research to be able to find out what the best markets are. We definitely don't want to pour our initial resources into a market that, as it turns out, is not a good market for your products. For instance, an example that I give really often, because it's so pronounced, is Brazil. When you look at Brazil, it's a very large country with a large population. They have a large middle class. They like buying good stuff. So, like, what's not to like? Well, as it turns out, there's a lot not to like. If you look at a country only from a marketing perspective, you will probably miss at least 50% of the this decision factors. For instance, in the case of Brazil, they're they have about 100, almost 100% um, uh, uh, taxes, tariffs, customs duties on U.S. made products, which will make you almost immediately not competitive. And so that alone can usually shoot you down. Another thing is that, from an intellectual property perspective, in the United States, depending on what it is that you're trying to protect, it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And in Brazil, it's more like 10 years. And so that's not a good either. The other thing about Brazil is that for a very long time, including now, if you go to the bank to borrow money, interest rates start at about 35%. We complain here when we have to pay 6, 7, 8%. And how would you like to have to pay 35%? And so there's a lot of reasons why Brazil may not be a good market. There are, in fact, a few products that, because export Brazil does not manufacture in large enough quantities, they will accept them into Brazil, U.S. made products, and with low tariffs and duties and all of that, but very, very, very few. So it's really important that you look at the whole perspective of the country to see if this would be a good market for you or not. The other thing is, do you have enough capacity? I often hear, well, we'd like to go to XYZ country, but the reality is they don't have the financial or human resources or the capacity, the equipment capacity, to increase productivity, productions significantly, and they may not have the financial withdrawal to be able to do that. So those are things that you have to really be cognizant of. Is, do you have the financial capability to hire more people, to buy more equipment, to buy a larger building or warehouse because of the additional production needs or warehousing needs that you might have. So, is the company willing to dedicate resources, like I mentioned before, and does the company have any international experience, or do you have anybody with international experience that might be able to be the lead on that capabilities? Okay. Uh, so some of the additional questions that you ought to ask is, how successful are your products domestically? Once in a while, a company will have a product that is not, that never has done well in the United States, and they think that by exporting it, that it maybe they'll have more success. Well, I guess it's possible, but it isn't likely. Now, on the other hand, it could very well be that you have a product that has gone gangbusters in the past, and because of technology changes and maybe other global changes, that product is no longer doing well, and so you come out with a new innovation that improves the product that you have, and so your old product, it's not necessary that you'll just stop selling it. As a matter of fact, a fantastic thing, a strategy is to sell that product elsewhere. Not everybody requires or needs or can afford the top of the line products and or services, and it may very well be that you can reduce the price of those products or services to foreign markets, that for them it would be a step up, and so you can continue generating revenues from your old product lines or your old service lines, while at the same time you're ramping up your new innovative products in the United States and other more advanced economies. So that's something to really look at. Do you believe you have products or services that you can export? Obviously we've kind of covered that. Are you already receiving international inquiries for your products and services? A lot of times you'll get, as I said, you'll get calls, you'll get emails, you'll get some sort of communication asking you about your products. That's a really good marketing information. Google, looking at where when people are looking at your website, where are those people at? If you see a fairly large percentage of inquiries or website views coming from a particular country, that's a pretty good indicator that for some reason, and we need to discover the why, but that for some reason people in that country are interested in your product or services, and you should definitely be paying attention to those Google reviews or website inquiries, or the fact that somebody is looking at your website. You should really be paying attention to that, because that's a very good indicator that that country may be a very viable market for your products. On the other hand, if some country or countries are not inquiring, well, that's a good indicator that maybe that's not the best choice, right? So do pay attention to Google Analytics. That's the words I was reaching for, analytics, to see where people are coming from when they're looking at your website. And it may very well be that you also, as you see that for whatever reason, 12% of your analytics say that people from Italy are looking at your website. It might be something that you look at in terms of having people, having the language translator, the website translated into Italian or Spanish or whatever it happens to be. Jonathan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna, and you may be addressing this later on, and I apologize if you are,
No
but this would
worries.
be a great plug for the. We work closely with the U.S. Commercial Service, and Richard Duda would be your contact here in Arkansas, but
Yep.
they have a service. It's called the Website Globalization Review. So it kind of, is talking about exactly what Rudy is speaking to here. It makes your international customers, it makes it easier for them to do business with you. And it drives that international global traffic to your website as
Yep.
well. So,
Yeah.
government shut down right now, but we're happy to make that introduction to the U.S. Commercial Service for
Yeah.
you.
And I will be covering some of that a little bit
Right.
later on, but absolutely. In any case, there are lots of resources and information out there. You need to be paying attention to them and utilizing those resources, and we will be covering those a little bit later on. The other thing that you need to think about is, well, you need to make modifications. In the United States, we use 110 volts, and that's actually kind of an anomaly. Probably, I would say half the world uses something else. And so it may very well be that you need to modify your products or services, maybe, well, certainly in terms of packaging and language and things like that. You'll have to make modifications, and often that's going to cost money. Could be just a little bit of money, or it could be about, more money. And so just kind of be aware that the rest of the world does not may not uh, be able to utilize your products or services exactly as is, and that you'll have to make some sort of modifications to be able to do business in that country. Okay, so one of the ways that you find out whether are we going to target this country or countries or those is by doing market research. That's just so important. And one of the biggest mistakes that you can make is not doing this initially and deciding that, oh well, Brazil's a great it should be a great market because they're a big country and they have money and people like good stuff. And I recently spoke to a company that they had been trying to penetrate the Brazilian market for 10 years without success and had no idea why. And I told them in 5 minutes why they had just been wasting the last 10 years marketing to the wrong country. So research is just very important. As I think I may have mentioned very early on, a lot of people are already exporting reactively. Somebody calls them from Italy, Germany, or wherever, and says, "Hey, I'd like to buy your widget or your service," and so we sell it to them, and that's reactive as opposed to strategic, identifying those countries that would make a very good new country to sell to, and the reasons that they would be good countries to sell to, and also identifying what other factors that you have to take into consideration. For instance, the fact that they use 220 and not 110, and that there are some maybe cultural issues in terms of like where they buy stuff from. One of the things that you'll find is that in the United States, I always tell my clients and my students that the first thing that you ought to do when you're contemplating doing international business is to recognize that things are not done in other countries the way that they are done here, and that you need to make the assumption that they are in fact done differently in other countries, as opposed to making the assumption that they're done either very similarly or exactly like the way they are in the United States. The chances of that is really small. So if you will start with the assumption that in every category that you're looking at every consideration that you're looking at, that it is done differently, and until it is proven otherwise, you will find that you'll be much more successful. Start with the assumption that, it's probably done differently. It's bought differently. It's bought in different places. It's bought in different sizes. You will probably be correct most times. In the United States, we tend to have larger houses and larger and as a consequence, larger everything, larger refrigerators, more storage space, lots of things like that. And so, for instance, in some countries, because they have none of those things, they live in small apartments, tiny little refrigerators, basically no storage space. Guess what? they can't go to Costco. They don't go to Costco and buy, extra large everything in order to be able to save money because they can't. Either they don't have the income to buy the larger quantities of products. They don't have a place to put them in the refrigerator because they have really small, these refrigerators. I'm looking at mine over here. These small refrigerators that are just like 3 feet high and foot and a half wide. That's what they use. And so buying the super jumbo size X, that doesn't work in those countries. They things like extra large shampoo bottles, they don't buy them. They buy it in little single-use packets. And so, if the packaging is going to be have to be different, the shipping is going to have to be different, the production is going to have to be different, how you market it and where they tend to buy those things will be different. And once again, make the assumption that it's going to be that all those things, the pricing, the where they buy them from, where they store them, how much money they're willing to spend. It's really important that you assume that it's different than it is in the United States until proven otherwise. Uh, Another reason for doing market research is that investing in market research is going to vastly increase your chances of success. And if you don't do it, or if you limit what you're researching, the chances of you being successful without any hiccups, pretty small. Okay, continuing along those lines, finding out where your products are most likely to sell. There will be there will be countries, for instance, there will be countries that perhaps some of these issues that I just described maybe are not as extreme, and therefore maybe what you're selling right now could go into those countries with minimal modifications. And so, doing the only way that you're going to find that out is by doing market research, identifying market segment and niche markets. It may very well be that in a foreign market, once again, the market is different. Determining both domestic and international competitors, super important. One of the, one of the things I've been doing consulting for a really, really long time, and sometimes people come to me and I'll say, well, so who's your competition? And they'll say, there is no competition. And I turn to my computer and about 15 seconds later, I have seven competitors right in their city, and maybe many, many, many more internationally or whatever. And the reason for it is because people did either chose not to do the research or for whatever reason think that these guys are not competitors. What you really need to be afraid is not the fact that you have competition. If there in fact are no competitors, that's what you have to be afraid of because the chances are that there is no market. That country, they just there is no market for your product or services in that country, and so don't be afraid of competition. That's an indicator that there is a market for that, and you're just going to have to be able to figure out how you're going to. What marketing sorts of endeavors are you going to undertake that are going to allow you to stand out and capture market share from those companies that are there already, and you can learn a whole lot by especially if you're looking at companies that have been there for quite some time. You ought to be paying attention to that because if they've been there for a while, it's because they've figured some of these things out, and you ought to pay attention to those sorts of things. What sort of market barriers are there to entry? Especially if you have competitors, and they've been there for a long time, there may be some barriers there of different kinds. For instance, their brand has been recognized already for a long time, and so those are the sorts of things that you're going to have to think through. understanding the customer's needs and accommodating them. Just like I was saying, it could be that, they want to buy stuff in smaller packages, or the pricing may be too high. It could be a great number of things. Identifying new trends, determining whether you have a price competitiveness. And one of the things that I want you to know, and I want to say it now just to make sure that I don't forget, is that as you enter new markets, you're going to be buying from your suppliers a larger volume, which is going to warrant you asking for discounts. And as you get those discounts, once again, your profitability goes down. Your profitability goes up, and your cost structure goes down, which means that you could pass some of those savings on into those countries that perhaps can't stand prices to be quite as high. And so, just the very fact that by entering international markets, you're going to buy more, your cost structure is going to go down. That alone is one of the reasons that you may want to enter foreign markets. Some of the things that you're going to have to really look at when you're doing your market research is, obviously political and government stability. We're suffering from some of that stuff ourselves here in the United States. Cultural and business practices. Please, ladies and gentlemen, assume that it is different, because there's like a 98% chance that at least some of those things are going to be different. Our cousins to the north, Canada. I mean, you could not find two countries that are more similar, but there in fact are some differences between Canada and the United States, certainly in terms of culture, and certainly in terms of business practices, and their political structure is different. And so pay attention to those kind of things, because those are the sorts of things that you could step on a pothole, if not a landmine, if you don't understand them. Uh, you can also look at potential business partnerships. Right now, I'm working with a company out of Lithuania who wants to the U.S. Look at the U.S. market, and they've hired me to look at possible business partnerships that will make entry into the U.S. market easier and more profitable. Look at market entry issues, taxes and duties, import licenses, inspections. All these things obviously have a cost, and you don't want to be surprised by the fact that you didn't find out about them until it was too late. Demographics. If you're selling stuff for young people, and in fact in that country the number of young people is diminishing, that could be an issue. Distribution. In the United States, once again, we make the United States is probably the worst country for making assumptions, because we think that everything is done here. During World War II, the United States built its highway system to be able to transport all sorts of war materials from one side of the country to the other very, very rapidly. And obviously, we got the advantage of being able to travel ourselves through those highway systems. That doesn't exist in many, many, many countries. And getting from one part of the country to the other can be very difficult. And so, if you think that it works just like it does in the United States, hey, well, just put it on a truck. No, maybe, maybe not. So those are things that you have to take a look at: income distribution, population and age distribution. So, like I said, these are all things that you have to take a look at. I was talking about the airports and the roads and the ports, and how easy it is to move from one part to the other. You have to pay attention to those things. Some countries are growing in terms of they're getting wealthier because they're exporting. They're at a different stage in their economic development, either worse or better. So those are all things that are just very critical, that if you fail to do, that's going to be problematic. So in terms of resources, and I'm going to kind of go through this right here, but trade.gov, it's a government, obviously a government website. There's lots of information on a large number of websites, and within the internet, and also the export.gov, trade.gov, data mine are some of the resources. Um, Here's a book that you can acquire. It's called a basic guide to exporting. Super book. You can download it, and I think Miss Heidi will have some information about how to acquire this book. But in any case, this is something that you can look at that has just tremendous amount of information. As you can see, there's a website here where you can download the free version of the book, and it talks about how to sell more easily into other countries, and um, you know, th- just like I've been talking about assumptions and not making them. And so this is some resources that you can look into. Here's some other resources in terms of partners that we deal with, that we have here in Arkansas and in other places. The International Trade Administration, trade.gov, Export U, the World Trade Center, the Arkansas World Trade Center, one of our primary partners. And they are charged with helping develop trade missions between Arkansas and other countries. And so, if they're going to have a trade mission to the UK or wherever, you can go with them, and they will make all the arrangements to introduce you to companies in those countries that are interested in buying similar products to what you're selling. Obviously, the National Association of District Councils, which we are part of, we have great information at this website. The Rural Export Center that does lots and lots of research. That is actually their primary goal, is doing research. Shipping Solutions, one of our partners, great resource. IBT, and obviously the Arkansas District Export Council has many past webinars that we've put on covering different topics, and you should definitely pay attention to those as well. Uh, Jonathan mentioned this good-looking young man here, Richard Duda. Earlier, he is with the Commercial Service Division, which is part of Commercial Service and ITA, the International Trade Administration. Unfortunately, at this moment, he is vacationing, so to speak. But in any case, the Commercial Service folk and the Export Assistance Center, great organization. They obviously have contact with all their commercial service offices all over the world and with the embassies as well. And so they can help you identify um, possible markets. And also, if you're being contacted by ABC company in Egypt, they can actually Richard can actually contact the embassy in Egypt and they will find out whether ABC company is for real or not, and they'll talk to their banks and just make sure that these guys that are contacting you are for real and that they are trustworthy and that you can do business with them. So definitely, Richard is somebody that you need to be familiar with as well. Okay, so one of the things that here's some additional stuff that you got to pay attention to. This is going to take time. It isn't like doing business in the United States, and you're going to have to sacrifice short-term profits for long-term profits and long-term profitability, and building your brand and whatnot. And so if it's one of these things that if you can't be profitable like right off the bat, then we can't do that. That's going to be problematic. There are going to be increased administrative and travel costs. It is different now, better. That's how it's different. It's better now. Certainly, in terms of initial discussions, you can use the internet. 5 years ago, pre-COVID, not so much. It was one of these things where you had to go to that country and talk to people. And now it's gotten to the point where you can have at the very least have initial discussions with countries or companies in different countries to ascertain whether this is something that they're interested in or that you're interested in. And but there are going to definitely be travel costs at some point. As I said before, using your internal staff, that's probably not going to work out. You're going to have people who have a variety of attributes. For instance, if your sales guy here in the United States isn't particularly social and doesn't like to learn different languages and really think it's, America or the highway. Well, obviously that's not a good person to have who is, marketing your company and being the face of your company, right? So having people who like international, who perhaps maybe know additional languages, have had experiences outside of the United States, those are going to be very, very valuable people for you to have on your staff. So, be aware of that. You're going to have to develop different marketing materials, probably in different languages, and taking into account cultural issues that you may not have run into before. You're going to have to comply with international standards. You're going to have to you may need an export license, uh, uh, depending on what it is that you're doing. Uh, there will be things like foreign currency fluctuations that you have to pay attention to, and you're going to need larger lines of credit in order to be able to buy more widgets, more materials, more everything, and more equipment, larger warehouses, in order to be able to do international business. And so those are things that you've just got to know that this is if you're going to be serious about doing international business, these are some of the things that you're going to have to pay attention to and that you're going to have to commit to, and that's just kind of the way it is. Okay, so one of the reasons, one of the very important reasons that you want to have an export license is if you're kind of like the company I mentioned earlier, you're in charge of sales and you're going to have to sell management on all this litany of things that we just finished describing. Well, the best way to be able to do that is to have an export a marketing plan to so that they're going to ask you all these questions. So what about X? What about Y? What about Z? And you will have done all the market research already, and you've determined that the three best countries to look at are A, B, and C. And having the answers to those questions is going to be really important. And so that's because if you can't sell management, that pretty much ends the right there. Once again, you're going to have to make sure that you understand what the business objectives are, and that you're going to have to make some sacrifices in profitability at the onset, and that you're not going to just all of a sudden open the door and they're going to come flooding in. It's unlikely to happen that way. And so obviously, the other reason is that you want to do export and that develop the export plan and determine what countries to start with, is so that you can be successful, that you can grow your sales and make more money. And companies that export tend to pay about 20% more than companies that don't. That's a pretty good reason why. You can attract better people. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that the company with the best employees wins every time. Okay, so that's one reason that we want to make more money so that and be more profitable, so we can hire better people and just work with great people and be more profitable all the way around. Okay, so some of the steps for creating an export license is the kind of the analysis part, identify your products and services that your company might have 10 products or it may have 100 products, and some might be better products to consider for exporting. For instance, I mentioned a little bit earlier that you may have some older products that and you've innovated your product lines and you have this new products, and you might want to actually start selling your products that are the second gen, the previous generation into some other markets. Which ones? Which ones would these products or services be best suited for, with minimal modifications, and at a lower price? So, looking at your product lines and looking at which ones are better suited for exporting than others. Um, Target markets. Once again, when I've taught export sorts of classes to companies, we try to determine the top three markets. Now, very obviously, you're not going to want to or probably be able to enter all three markets at the same time, and I do not recommend it, even if financially you could. You want to start with the very best market, start building up revenues and experience from that, and then when it seems to be right, then enter the second best market and then the third best market, on and on and on, and then you start that cycle all over again. Now the fourth and fifth market. So prioritize which markets are best for you, and target, identify those markets and those countries that are, and it may very well be that because the country could be so large, like for instance India. The idea of entering all of India at once, pretty daunting. And I assure you that certain parts of India are going to be better for certain products and services than others. And so identifying those segment and niche markets is going to be really important. Thinking about shipping, financing, repairs and warranty. If you're selling the stuff that could break down, you're going to have to think about, okay, if something goes wrong with this product, whether it's while it was being shipped or after a year or two or whatever that the person bought it, and it needs to be repaired. How are you going to handle that? I used to own an IT company many, many years ago, and companies from all over the world would contract with me to repair their clients' computers. And so that's something that you may want to consider, is having repair centers in that country. They're already in that country to do repairs. You might have to bring them to the United States to learn how to work on your equipment, and that way you have somebody in Egypt that can work on those products. So those are the sort of things that you need to kind of think through, and monitor the results. What does success look like for you? And so determine what your expectations are, and you want to make sure that your distributors, if you're going to set up distributors, that they're performing, and keep monitoring those results. Okay, so in terms of like what should be in a business plan, an executive summary of one and a half, maybe 2 page at the very most, summary of basically all the information that management needs to look at, just very quickly, uh, and also, how are we going to make money, background analysis, the market implementation, the financial analysis, export policy commitments, and just all the information. Now, you see where I have all these little asterisks: need executive sign off. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, your management team, your CEO, and the company owners are going to have to, sign off on whether they're going to commit financial resources, human resources, to doing international business. And so the business plan is the best way to be able to sell them on why we should enter the X market, right, or the Z market. Um, and so these are some of the things that you need to have on your business plan. Okay, so we're at the end of our time here, and so these are some of the questions that I get asked often. What country should I start with? If my product is not selling well in the U.S., should I export it? And I kind of addressed that earlier. So once again, these are some of the things that you should be considering. And to that, I guess what we'll do now, Jonathan, is I am not in a position to see the questions. Are you or Heidi able to see any of those questions?
Yeah, we hadn't really had any come through, but Miss Heidi has shared the slides in the chat as well as the download for that book, the basic guide that
Super.
you were referring to earlier. Um,
I'm gonna stop
yep,
sharing
somebody's.
here.
It looks like somebody's ready to talk to Richard once he gets off of furlough, and then yeah, I think that's it. I think you did a great job kind of doing a very high level overview. There's a lot that goes into it, and I know it sounds scary and it can be daunting, but I promise you, doing the work on the front end and doing it right
Hmm.
and partnering with the right people, and there's all kinds of free services. You don't need to pay, you know, all these different organizations to help you. You can, reach out to people like Rudy that can hold your hand along in the process. So, no, Rudy, I think you did a good job on covering some of the topics.
I appreciate that, and, and along with Richard and his organization's capabilities, I think Jonathan mentioned early on that I'm part of a consortium of market entry consultants. We're currently in 33 countries, and so I can definitely help you enter new markets as well. But there's lots and lots of resources. Don't try to do it alone, especially if you're relatively new to either brand new or relatively new to exporting. Get the guidance of people who have been around for a long time to do that. Miss Heidi, I think you have one last slide.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, if you want to throw that up so that everyone has the information, the contact information for Jonathan, yourself, and me as well. I wonder. Oh, okay. Well, can you guys let me see here. Uh,
It's
Oh, there it is. There it is, right there. Are you guys able to see that?
it's slowly coming up. There we go.
Well, Shonda, I appreciate your comment in the chat as well. Well, humorous and he gets the point across. So thank you for that. I'm gonna copy it and put a note to myself.
Okay, yes. And when I close out the webinar, there will be a survey that pops up. If you wouldn't mind uh, filling out that survey. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. All
And
right.
and
Yep, we're right at the top of the hour. Again, I want to thank Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions and Arkansas Workforce Connections for their partnership. And we've got 5 more of these to go, different topics each time. So we hope that you come back.
yeah, Miss Heidi, do you have it that you've already put out information about the next webinar next week?
Yes, and I will also send that out again. That next week, William Burgess is going to talk about building a global infrastructure. Mhm.
Super important. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much again, and I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you all.